So if you want to go to the root cause of where the crisis has come from, it's really a capitalist crisis of overproduction. But if you want to look at the more recent issues about inflation, what you're really looking at is the effect of money printing. The main driver for inflation over the last 15 years has been constant rounds of money printing by the Bank of England. And this money was used to bail out the banks when they were teetering on the verge of collapse in 2008. And to bail out big business when the stock market crashed in February 2020. And both times it was presented as saving the economy, but really it's saving monopolies, big monopolies, which are on the verge of ruin. And this steady process of devaluing the currency has led us inexorably to the place we're in today, where inflation is becoming rampant because each pound is simply worth less than it was before. You know, that's what money printing does. It lowers the value of every pound in circulation. And that's theft from the workers, because they gradually find that their wages, their pensions, their savings are all worth less than they used to be, while wages are remaining stagnant. So they're getting pay cut in real terms and have been doing year on year since 2008. And of course, at the same time, they're suffering a big cut in their social wage. Health, education, and other spending goes down as a result of austerity, which we're told we need to balance the books because we bailed out the banks. So the workers get to pay twice over when the monopolists are considered by the government to be too big to fail. And that really shows us, I think, the true character of the British government, which pretends to rule on behalf of the people, but really rules on behalf of the monopolies. That is absolutely right. And again, we have to look at the nature of the government, look at the nature of the measures. We're being told by Kwasi Kwarteng that they want to save the economy. And that makes us think that all of us are going to be saved. But if you look at the measures, they overwhelmingly favor monopoly and disadvantage workers. If you look at the measures they're putting in place, they say they will stimulate investment by removing red tape. What does that mean? Take away planning laws, take away environmental protections. Those things are there to benefit workers, and they're being got rid of in the interests of profit. They say they'll encourage investment by keeping corporation tax low. That means less money to pay the national debt, less money to pay for services, more profit for the monopolists. They say they'll encourage investment by setting up special light touch zones. What does that mean? Fewer rights and lower pay for the workers. Again, more profit for private monopolies, less money for ordinary workers. And the other measures they're putting in are all about encouraging financial services companies to keep London as their preferred base. So they're lifting the cap on bankers' bonuses. They're keeping the top rate of income tax low. The reason that they care about the City of London so much is a huge proportion of Britain's GDP comes via this square mile, where all of the imperialist looting of the globe, all their money laundering is rooted via institutions in the City of London. So it's very important, these measures for monopoly capital. At the same time, and this is really what the economists at the IMF and such are worried about, they don't mind the other measures. They're like, yes, yes, good, good. That might lead to growth in profit. But there's social unrest is threatening at home because of the enormous inflation crisis, the crisis in the cost of living. And so at the same time as putting all these measures in place to benefit monopolies, Truss and Kwarteng have put a couple of measures in place to keep the lid on social unrest. And one of those is dropping the national insurance tax hike, which is very unpopular because it disproportionately hits poor workers. And one of them is capping energy bills, which of course are threatening to overwhelm almost anyone who has a take-home pay packet. Now, those things are going to cost a lot of money. And whichever way they're paid for, they're going to add to the debt. They're probably going to add to money printing. It's going to fuel inflation more. It's going to make Britain's finances as a whole look more shaky. This is why this sort of this kind of run on the pound is happening, as investors say, we're a bit worried that doesn't all add up. But this is the bind that the ruling class finds itself in order to turn its economy into a more light touch, fewer workers' rights, through environmental protections, all of that kind of thing. They've at the same time got to keep the lid on social unrest to be able to do that. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because there's another factor that's fueling the cost of living crisis, and particularly the spike in energy prices. And that, of course, is our ruling class and all of the West's, NATO's, the USA's proxy war against Russia. Now, Russia's not an enemy of the British people, and Russia's prosperity and independence doesn't threaten us, but it's definitely seen as a threat to the interests of the monopolists. They need to expand into every corner. They need to dominate every part of the globe, every market, every raw material. They need to get maximum profit from everywhere. And their war in Ukraine has backfired because they imagined that by launching a trade war against the Russian economy, they would quickly bring it to its knees. And so a little bit of short-term pain would be worth it because the Russian people would come onto the streets, they'd bring down their government, bring down President Putin, and the monopolists would then have free rein to loot Russia's resources at rock bottom prices. Right? That was their plan. Instead, what's happened is the sanctions they've implemented have exacerbated their own problems. They already had supply and inflation problems. They were already facing issues because of their trillions of pounds worth of money printing, and COVID disruptions messed around with their global supply chains. Instead of destroying Russia's economy and allowing themselves to loot the world, they've ended up hastening the destruction of their own, and they don't have an easy way out. It's like a Gordian knot for them, right? And I think, yes, in the short term, it's only going to get worse. None of these measures are going to help ordinary people. There is going to be unrest. There is going to be a lot of fear, hunger, poverty, cold, blackouts most likely. But we can expect in all of this that the war rhetoric is going to go up and not down in response to the difficulties of the British monopolists, because their main hope of salvation is in destroying and looting the Russian Federation and China. And that's the only way they really see out of this crisis of theirs. So it's the government acting on behalf of the monopolists. You know, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, they're servants of the super rich, of the owners of monopoly capital. They don't act, you know, on their own behalf. They act under instruction. I think there's every likelihood of social movements erupting and growing, of anger spilling onto the streets as the winter continues, as you know, people become cold and hungry. Absolutely. What's going to come out of that in the short term, I wouldn't like to predict, but I think we will see a big upsurge in the desire for working class organization and ability to fight back. So yes, it's absolutely not in the interests of the people of Britain to be subsidizing the arms industry so that, you know, NATO continue to wage a proxy war against Russia. That's not in the interests of the British working people. It's in the interests of monopoly capital, which wants to destroy Russia's independence so that it can loot Russia's resources at will, and, you know, without having to pay the market price. Basically, that's how imperialism works. That's what imperialism desires. That's what comes first at all costs. The desire for maximum profit, the drive for maximum profit of monopolies is what drives the decision-making of our government. And that's absolutely why they are prioritizing the needs of the profiteers over the needs to live and eat and have shelter and heat of their own working people.